So, hello everyone, it's me, Michael Ankers, and welcome back to another episode of the Glittery podcast. Now, in today's episode, we've got a very special treat because I've got my first ever guest on the podcast. This I'm speaking to today is Sam Mitchell, from the host of the Autism Rock and Rose podcast. So, hello Sam, how are you doing today?
Hey buddy, thanks for coming back on. I figured I better come on since you came on my hijack show. Maybe we can exchange pictures, right?
Exactly, because Sam very nicely got in touch with me about coming on my podcast, and I thought, why not? And so basically, how I know Sam is earlier this year, I was on, it was like a sort of like spin-off series of of his podcast, obviously the hijack series. Well, you sort of let me speak about autism, but his is specifically about obviously lots of different topics to do with autism. So, first question for you, Sam, is what inspired you to do the podcast? Like, how long have you been doing it for? When did you start doing it? That sort of thing.
Started to enjoy my high school's media club, and I fell in love with it so much I decided to start my own podcast, and that was when Autism Rocks and Rolls was born. I didn't wait till college to expand my skills, though, so I decided to start at home first to gain some skills before I did go to college.
Oh, that's quite good. I like that. So,
thinking ahead in retrospect.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm guessing you're autistic yourself, right? Because I know we sort of discussed that. But
oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that's what I wanted to do. Because I knew you were, but so when were you? So when were you like? Because I don't know how old you are now, but when were you first diagnosed with autism?
At the age of 4.
And how old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
23.
23. So, what would you say as a child was the sort of like, and obviously, old now, but as like a child and a young person, so obviously, like, say I'm 21, but like, say when you were younger, like, what would you say were the sort of challenges growing up with being autistic?
A lot of socializing was very tough for me. I think you can relate to that probably. I had a lot of communication issues, a lot of conversation skills not making sense. I also had a lot of sensory issues growing up. I didn't like wearing a wet t-shirt just because it really hurt my skin.
I think that's a good example because, like, especially a lot of autistic people, they seem like, especially wet t-shirt, but in terms of things like textures, like I know what you mean in that sense because I'm very funny with how things feel. Like, I can think something looks really nice, and if I feel it, and it's like, ugh, and I'm like, I don't want it, and it's like, it's the thing that people like, is it? I'm like, yeah. Even if something looks really nice, but it feels horrible, I don't want to wear it, or like, touch it, whatever. And socialising, like you said, obviously I can agree with that because I think for a lot of autistic people, whether you're from America, UK, Canada, wherever, the aspect of like, especially like when you're in an educational setting, like obviously I'm in university, it can be quite challenging, especially because like from where what education you're in and stuff, like there may not be a lot of knowledge of autism, or there may not be a lot of other when you're that age, like kids or people that know a lot about it or with it, so it might be sort of like it's very overwhelming. So with your podcast as well, just going back to that for a minute, so obviously you've had obviously a lot of probably obviously including me from the UK, lots of people from all over. So what would you say you find, like, what would you say you would find, like, really, how do you find, like, doing your actual podcast, and like what do you like, why do you enjoy doing it, is what I should say?
Because I get to share stories. You had to be there to either A, understand, or B, if I told you about them on any other platform, you'd look at me like I was a crazy person.
Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm autistic myself, but I can understand what you mean. Like, it can be like, why are you talking about this? It's like, but obviously there's a lot of different podcasts that cover different things. But I think it's really good like what you do, and like I'm not obviously like like when I was on your podcast, I mentioned that obviously I've been on other awesome podcasts, and I mean, even though this podcast that I'm doing isn't specifically about autism, it's about a range of topics, and obviously one of the main things for me, because obviously I'm autistic, and obviously I want to have you on, and I have other people on in the future, I'm sure, with us that we know, autism, other neurodivergencies like disabilities, things like that. Um, so as obviously an adult now, so what would you say are sort of the more, because obviously, obviously I'm 21, like I've been diagnosed officially for about 11 years, something like that. Obviously, no, obviously you're longer, but what would you say are the sort of like challenges as an autistic adult over, being, obviously we said before about an autistic young person, but how is it being like an autistic adult? What are the challenges with that, if there is any?
Well, still trying to understand social cues. But I would also say some of the challenges I have as an adult are trying to understand people and the way they operate, because sometimes the way people operate just don't make plain sense.
Yeah, that is very true, because like obviously if it doesn't make sense, it's very challenging, and like some people really don't do it. It's like, what do you mean? And like some people, like I think even as like even adults, but like some people when they say stuff like they're not very specific in what they're talking, and I'm like, you need to be more specific. But I know what you mean. Um, and then so with obviously I'm autistic myself and things like that. So how would you, I'm trying to think of the word, brain. Um, well, what would you say are the sort of, because obviously, I mean, we've talked about like the challenges for like an autistic young person or adult, but like, what would you say? Because I mean, I think to be fair, with being autistic, there are some, I don't want to say benefits, but like, it is a good thing as well. Um, and obviously, not trying to like shadow it as being a bad thing. So, like, what would you say about, because obviously it doesn't define you, it's a part of you, but what would you say the good things are about being autistic?
I think we're advanced the way we think, and we're very creative and outside the box thinkers. Sometimes people are like, whoa, because they didn't think of it, or it's just out there and it kind of bonkers, but it works.
Yes, I would say that definitely. Because like specifically with like the type of autism I'm got, Asperger's syndrome, people go, "Oh, you're a genius," because you're like, and like you say, like very high and advanced, like somewhat gifted with specific, maybe like a specific subject like maths or something like that. But like, yeah, exactly, a lot more. And obviously, there's different levels of autism and stuff as well, and obviously there's a whole spectrum. But they are a lot more advanced. Like I'm not saying we're better than everyone, but obviously we're a lot more advanced, and like you say, with thinking and things like that. So, what would you say? What advice would you give for like anyone that's listening? Just like if they're autistic and they're having like like struggles like because they're autistic, or like they're doubting themselves or anything like that. What would your advice be to them?
Well, for the longest time, I thought no one would find me interesting. I realize now that's bogus. I'll explain. So, back in kindergarten, I had one friend, right? I thought that's the only person that's going to find me interesting. Well, now looking back on that piece of advice I had, I feel kind of like an idiot, because I realized that's not the case. There are people who are interested in you. It may be someone I expect, like a World War II veteran or someone from the UK, but they do.
Exactly, like that's a good example, because like obviously like for like that's a good example, World War Two veteran, but but yeah, exactly, like you, I think like, especially like, and I can relate to that, because I always think like I think with me as an autistic person, like sometimes I often need like not as much, but like even at like 21, like reassurance. But like I know within myself like a lot more now that I'm interested in people actually do care and are interested in my life and things. Um, and yeah, I know exactly. So you're right in what you're saying, because like, like some, you don't have to be famous to be interested, or or anything like that. It's just you are who you, and like obviously you do a podcast which is great about autism, and obviously you have different people on, and obviously you talk about obviously your life with autism as well, and I think that's really great because, and obviously like because it's obviously raising awareness, but then obviously you get to meet people. Obviously you interviewed me from the UK, but obviously you have other people from America and other places as well. Um, but because you're learning their stories, but then you're learning more about autism. But then other people that obviously like watching or listening to your podcast episodes can obviously like learn from that, whether they're autistic or whether they're not, because obviously they might live with someone with autism, or friends, family, or be with someone with autism, anything like that. Or might teach autistic children, things like that. So I think it's really great what you're doing, like with your podcast specifically, because I think obviously there's a lot more awareness, so there's a lot more knowledge, like obviously especially in 2025 about autism, but obviously we're always learning things, even as autistic individuals ourselves. So I think it's really great what you're doing with your podcast. So I just wanted to say that. So finishing off, so can you let everyone know where we can find your podcasts and things like that on social media things?
Oh yeah, sure. You can find me on your favorite media social platforms, or not media social media platforms. Are not a hard guy to find. If you Google me in your search engine, optimization, something will pop up. I'm not a hard guy to find. Trust me, I've done the research myself.
Well, that's great to know. Well, thank you very much, Sam, for being on the podcast, and really appreciate you coming on. And obviously, Eden, if anyone would like to, obviously, as we've discussed earlier in this episode, I was on an episode of Sam's spin-off, forgetting the name now.
Hi,
Jack, thank you. Autism Brain, short term. Hi, Jack. The Autism Watching Rose, and that is available on YouTube and obviously other platforms as well. So, and if you want to listen to that, just search it up. Just search my name; it'll come up. My Planter's interview. So, anyway, thank you very much for being on, and I really appreciate you being a guest. And thank you to everyone for listening. And I hope everyone found something new about autism. And obviously, if you want to listen to Sam's podcast, make sure you do. And obviously watch it on YouTube as well. So thank you very much, Sam, for coming on.